In the gray pre-dawn stillness of the North African desert, Corporal Ernest Mallory crouched behind a sand dune, his fingers trembling around a lukewarm tin mug of tea. The sky was a soft bruise of violet and amber, and the clatter of distant engines rippled through the cooling air like warning drumbeats. His unit, part of the British 7th Armored Division, had spent the night repairing tracks and patching thin armor plates baked brittle by weeks of triple-digit heat. The tension lay thick on them, like the dust, like the exhaustion. Yet today there was an unusual, prickling unease. Whispers had spread along the column, carried in the muttered tone usually reserved for superstition or death. A new German charge, they said. Small, magnetic, barely the size of a biscuit tin, but it eats tanks alive. Mallory had laughed at first. The men always talked. New weapons, new terrors. The desert had a way of magnifying fear as surely as it magnified heat. But the officers didn't laugh. Major Colin Ramsey, a man known for his granite temperament, had questioned every survivor of the last skirmish. Those shaken men had all given the same account. Something slapped onto their tank hulls, something metallic, something that stuck. Then a sound like the tearing open of the earth itself. An armor, 2 inches thick, had split like wet paper. Mallory didn't believe it. Not fully. Britain had the world's best tanks, solid, reliable, with steel plates forged to withstand most field threats. A palm-sized weak magnetic charge, as one sergeant had put it, was nothing compared to a proper-shaped charge or anti-tank gun. Yet one detail gnawed at him, the look in Ramsey's eyes. A man who did not fear much, but feared this. As the sun finally cracked the horizon, Mallory shouldered his gear and took his post atop a newly repaired Crusader tank. The metal felt warm already, humming faintly under the rising heat. He ran a hand over its surface, thinking of the stories. A charge that clung. A charge invisible until too late. Down the line someone shouted. The desert shimmered as shapes moved on the far ridge. German infantry, lean silhouettes advancing with unsettling calm. And glinting faintly in their hands, caught by the new sunlight, were objects that looked absurdly small for the terror they supposedly unleashed. Mallory felt his throat tighten. Perhaps the rumors were not rumors at all. Perhaps something truly dangerous had arrived on the battlefield. Something small. Something weak. Something deadly. The Germans came quickly, advancing with disciplined precision across the broken plain. Their boots kicked up spirals of powdered sand, and the black crosses on their sleeves flashed starkly each time sunlight caught them. Mallory steadied his binoculars, watching the line of men split into scattered fire teams. Most carried rifles or machine pistols. But a few, those moving lower, closer to the dunes, held the small charges. Cylindrical, magnet-studded, carried like lunch pails. Infantry with anti-tank gear, someone called. It sounded ridiculous. Infantry weapons didn't do that kind of damage to tanks at range. But these men weren't aiming from afar. They were moving to close distance as if the tanks were prey in a trap. The order was given, fire. The Crusaders' cannons boomed, coughing flame and smoke. Shells tore into the dunes, kicking up geysers of sand. Some Germans fell, but others kept advancing, crawling, disappearing into the folds of the desert like hunters who knew their game well. Machine gun fire clattered from the tank hulls, chewing through brush and sand, but the men with the charges seemed almost impossible to pin down. They moved with a strange, practiced purpose. Mallory's heartbeat rattled in his chest. One German soldier, young and sharp-jawed, sprinted through the chaos toward a nearby tank. Bullets ripped around him, stitching the ground at his heels, but he didn't falter. Reaching the tank's flank, he dropped low and slapped the small metallic device against the armor. It clicked, loudly, sickeningly, and held fast. Then the soldier rolled away. Not fleeing, merely seeking shelter as though this were routine. The explosion that followed was not thunderous. It was sharp, focused, like a hammer driving through stone. A spear of molten metal punched inward through the armor plate. The tank convulsed, shuddered, and fell silent as flames seeped from its hatches. Mallory stared, stunned. A tiny charge had done that. Ramsey's voice snapped through the din. Those are Hafthohlladung. Magnetic-shaped charges. Keep distance, don't let them close. But there was no distance in the desert today. The Germans kept coming, tossing charges, sticking them to the hulls with terrifying efficiency. Mallory realized then that the battlefield had changed. This was not a contest of firepower. This was proximity warfare, and they were losing ground fast. The weak, German magnetic charge was proving anything but weak. Inside the belly of Mallory's Crusader, the air was a suffocating stew of oil fumes, sweat, and fear. The steel walls vibrated with each explosion, each metallic clank, each scream of ricocheting shrapnel outside. Mallory dropped into the gunner's seat while Private Harding monitored the periscope, muttering incomprehensible prayers. The radio crackled with overlapping voices, shouts, warnings, orders dissolving into static. Keep them back. Charges on the left hull. Ramsey's down, someone get him clear. The tank lurched forward, treads grinding against uneven sand. Mallory fired another round, the recoil shaking the interior like a beast in pain. Through the narrow gun sight he caught glimpses of German soldiers weaving through smoke and sand clouds, swift and spectral. The worst part wasn't the explosions. It was the clicks. Every time a magnetic charge attached to a tank, the sound carried, small, crisp, unmistakable. A mechanical kiss of death. Click. Harding paled. That was close. Mallory forced himself to breathe. Check the left skirt. Before Harding could answer, the world outside flashed white. A detonation slammed the tank sideways, buckling panels and dimming the lights. Dust rained from the seams as though the Crusader itself was exhaling its final breath. That wasn't us, Harding whispered. Mallory didn't look at him. He didn't have to. He knew. Another British tank had been hit. Through the periscope Harding finally spoke, voice thin. They've learned where our armor is weakest. Side plates, engine housing, they know where to place them. Mallory gritted his teeth. Shaped charges focused their blast inward, directing a molten jet with surgical precision. Magnetic clamps ensured perfect placement. No bouncing, no sliding. It was simple, clever, devastating. And there was no armor thick enough to stop that jet once it aligned. Driver, pull back. Mallory ordered. We need space. But outside, the battlefield had become a maze of burning hulks and black smoke curtains. The German infantry moved among wrecks with eerie calm, placing more charges, ensuring no British vehicle survived long enough to regroup. Inside the Crusader, the men understood a terrible reality. They weren't fighting tanks or artillery. They were being dismantled, piece by tiny metal charges smaller than a helmet. And the enemy was still closing. By midday the heat was nearly intolerable. Flames from destroyed tanks danced in shimmering mirages, blending with the rising desert haze. Mallory's Crusader limped across the battlefield, its side armor dented inward, its engine coughing like a dying animal. They reached a small ridge where surviving British units attempted a desperate regroup. Major Ramsey, miraculously still alive but limping heavily, barked orders as he stitched a makeshift bandage around his thigh. Spread out. Keep them from coming close enough to place the charges. But the desert offered little cover. And the Germans were already adapting. Mallory watched as German squads coordinated seamlessly, some laying suppressive fire, others advancing low with the magnetic charges strapped across their backs. The precision was chilling, as though they had rehearsed this dance countless times. We need infantry support, Harding muttered. We are the infantry support, Ramsey replied bitterly. Then came the counter-assault. British infantry surged forward from behind the ridge, rifles cracking in rapid succession. Mortars thumped, sending plumes of sand skyward. The air filled with a chaotic mixture of grit and gunfire. Mallory felt a flicker of hope, movement, aggression, momentum. But hope dissolved quickly. The Germans responded with chilling composure, pulling back behind wreckage and dunes. The moment British soldiers advanced too close to the smoldering tanks, the enemy re-emerged from cover to plant more charges, using the wrecks as concealment. A British corporal sprinted forward, bayonet fixed, shouting as he dove toward one of the charge-carrying Germans. The two men collided in a blur of dust. But the German pulled a charge free, slapping it onto the wreck beside them. The corporal froze, not at the danger to himself, but at the realization of the trap. The explosion tore through both men. Ramsey swore under his breath. They're using the battlefield itself against us. Mallory saw it too. Every wrecked tank became a shield for German movement and a stage for more attacks. The British forces had entered a labyrinth of their own destroyed machinery. He climbed out of the tank to help direct fire, shouting for the infantry to fall back. Bullets snapped overhead, and the sun glared down with pitiless intensity. One German soldier broke from cover and sprinted directly towards Mallory's tank, Hafthohlladung in hand. Mallory fired his pistol wildly. The man stumbled, but not. Mallory dove behind a dune as the charge detonated. The explosion tore open the Crusader's side, engulfing the vehicle in a gout of smoke. The shockwave punched the air from his lungs. Harding and the driver were dragged from the wreck by medics, coughing and half-conscious. As Mallory struggled to stand, the tide of battle finally shifted. Reinforcements arrived, artillery batteries unleashing sustained barrages, forcing the German assault teams to retreat. The desert thundered with heavy shells, a grim orchestra of noise that drowned out the small deadly clicks of the magnetic charges. By late afternoon the battlefield quieted. Sand drifted across scorched steel in lifeless forms. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that stretched across the wreckage. Mallory sat beside the ruined Crusader, staring at one of the captured charges an engineer had retrieved. It looked unimpressive, ordinary, almost pathetic. A metal disc with 3 magnets and a conical core. No bigger than a lunch tin. But its simplicity was its power. Captain Hargreaves, an engineer with soot-stained hands, knelt beside Mallory. "You're wondering how something so small did all this?" Mallory nodded silently. Hargreaves tapped the device. "Shape charge. The cone inside focuses the blast. Turns the explosive energy into a jet of molten copper traveling at extreme velocity. Armor isn't just penetrated, it's punched through, pushed aside like dough." Mallory swallowed. "And the magnets? That's the genius. Ensures perfect placement. No bounce, no bad angles. The charge always hits flush against the armor." Mallory looked across the field. British tanks, once proud machines of steel and grit, lay gutted. Not from artillery. Not from anti-tank guns. From a weapon that fit in a soldier's palm. "Why did intelligence call it weak?" Mallory asked. "Because on paper," Hargreaves said, "it is. Low explosive mass. Small footprint. Requires direct contact. But its efficiency makes it terrifying. It does exactly what it's meant to do, and nothing wastes energy." Mallory felt a cold heaviness settle inside him. The Germans had created a weapon that didn't need range or heavy firepower. Just proximity, and courage enough to face a tank up close. As the sun dipped below the dunes, Mallory understood the grim truth of the battle. Strength was not measured by size or noise. Sometimes a weapon's power lay in its precision, its design, its perfect synergy with the soldier who carried it. The weak, magnetic charge had shredded British armor because it had never been weak at all. It had simply been underestimated.